At Option Genius, we believe that you deserve freedom, financial freedom, so that you have no more worries and more than enough money. Time freedom, so that you could do what you want, when you want to do it. And choice freedom, to live your life on your terms. But the system and Wall Street are rigged against us little guys. So how do we fight back? Well, my friend, that's what this podcast is all about. My name is Alan Sama, and this is the Option Genius Podcast. All right, passive traders, welcome to another edition of the Option Genius Podcast. We got a real treat for you today. I have one of my long time friends with me today, and we're actually doing something special. We're going to do a video as well as audio on the podcast. We will be having some slides, but when we show the slides, we'll describe to you what's going on in the slides. So those of you who are listening will not be missing out. And the video will also be on our media channels and YouTube channels, so you can catch it there if you need. I want to introduce my guest today. He is Mr. Doug Smith of Hawthorne Funds. Doug and I go back, we go back like over a decade or so.
Don't date us, but yes.
Yeah.
It feels like 15 years.
So Doug is Mr. Moneybags himself, Mr. Real Estate. You know, he's been doing real estate for years and years. He launched a very successful company called myhousedeals.com, where if you are a real estate investor, you can go and find all the deals that are not on the MLS. So it's pretty cool. And that site has made a lot of people a lot of money. But today we're going to be talking about Doug's newest venture. This is something that he's been doing for a few years now. And, you know, whenever you get together with friends, you talk and, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And we would share stories of what we were doing. And Doug, a few years ago, came up to me and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm doing all this stuff with land and doing this and doing that. And I was like, wow, man, you're making a killing. And he made such a big killing that he just has to get out. And he's like, all right, we need to do this on a bigger scale. And so Doug went and figured out how to do a investment fund. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I know back in episode 94, it's called How I Invest. I shared that one of my investments is in a real estate fund, and that is Doug's fund. And so I asked Doug to come on and answer some questions and give us some highlights about what investment funds are, how they work, what to look for when you're choosing one, making sure that your investment is safe and all that stuff. So Doug, hopefully I covered everything. If anything you want to add, please go ahead.
More or less, you covered all the stuff that makes me look good, so we'll just skip all the other stuff.
But, I didn't want to tell all your dirty secrets.
Yeah, right. Well, it's good to see you again, Alan, and thank you so much for having me here on the call. I'm really looking forward to sharing everything I can to educate people, help you out. You know?
I appreciate it. Thank you for having us. So tell us, what are you doing at Hawthorne?
Oh my gosh. Well, I work all the time, which was so funny because when you and I met, I was like a lifestyle guy. But yeah, for those considering starting up a private equity firm, just know that it will consume you. We buy and sell land outside of Houston, Texas. And so we're buying about $1 million a month worth of land, sometimes more. And we're selling maybe $2 million a month worth of land. It really just depends on the month. But that requires a lot of people and a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of Excel spreadsheets. There's just a lot going on. There's 20 or 30 of us that make all of this happen. So there's always something kind of vying for my attention as it pertains to buying and selling land and raising people's money and investing that money properly.
Yep. And so one of the things I did want to point out is that, Doug, you were doing this for yourself before you started the fund.
Yes, that's right. So not only did I have myhousedeals.com going on, I was buying and selling houses. I was selling those on owner financing. And then my business partner and I switched over to land in 2016, started buying that and selling on owner financing. And it was it was very profitable, but requiring a lot of my capital. And sometimes that capital would take 1.5 years or 2 years to come back. And I was wanting to do more deals as opposed to just sit on the sidelines, right, and wait for my money to come back. So that's when I started the fund around 2018 or so, started taking other people's money on as well.
Okay. So you had one iteration and then now you're in the second iteration, right? Or the second fund.
Yes, there was the first fund that was an equity fund. And then we formed a debt fund, I guess a few weeks ago at this point, maybe a month or two ago, and took on $5 or $6 million into that second fund. We had taken on about the same amount into the first fund, but they're structured differently, but they the end result is pretty similar for the investors and for us.
So can you give us the difference between debt versus private equity?
Yeah, sure. So that's one thing you said we're going to talk about on the call is like what would you want to look for if you're looking at investing in a private equity fund? And the majority of those funds out there are equity funds. And so that means that they're probably buying one or more assets, like multifamily apartment complex, for example, and they are going to leverage up with maybe 75 or 80% bank money. So that's debt. And then you, as an investor, you're a limited partner in these deals. So you're the equity portion, the 25% equity, and whatever it appreciates, forced appreciation or just natural appreciation over time, you benefit from that. But that can be a little bit risky if there's a downturn in the market or the property's not managed properly, because equity holders can get wiped out or at least have a lot of their money kind of like, wiped away. So a debt fund is when you invest in a fund and that fund becomes a lender against something. So they are now in the bank's position in that first example. So let's say you, Alan, or your friend is wanting to buy a house for $100,000 and you lend him $50,000. Well, if he totally mismanages the project and you have to foreclose on him, he's not paying you. Well, you're going to become the owner. You're going to foreclose and become the owner of that house and be able to resell it on the open market and almost certainly recuperate your $50,000 because the house would sell is worth more than that. So that's kind of like a simple way to explain the difference between an equity and a debt fund.
Okay. So now on the first one, the equity fund, you said that they go out and they borrow 75% of it and the investment funds are 25%?
I'd say that's a fairly typical kind of split
Right.
for
Okay.
equity funds. There are some equity funds that don't take on debt, but the majority do. And that's why they're able to pay out at, well, sometimes it ends up being maybe 15% internal rate of return over time. But there's some risks, there's some negatives. Those are projections. You never quite know how it's going to shake out.
Mm-hmm.
And your money would be locked up for usually about 3, 5, or 7 years, depending on the fund.
Okay. And what if you wanted to get out sooner than that? Is there any recourse?
For most funds, you can't.
No, just you can't give it to somebody else or they won't help you facilitate a change or
They might help you, but they're not obligated to do so. The latest fund that we set up that was finalized 1 or 2 months ago, you can get out. It's an evergreen fund. It is a lot more liquid. So that's one of the advantages of it.
Okay. So now you said yours is a debt fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you are using the fund's money to go out and buy the land?
Yeah. So let's say we're about to buy some land and it's going to cost $1 million. Well, we're able to borrow from the fund and the fund will be a lender on that deal. So my entity that I own, Hawthorne Land LLC, will borrow, and it's all at the courthouse, it's documented, from Hawthorne Income Fund LLC, which is where all the investors are as members.
Okay. So basically you created your own bank.
Yeah, basically.
Right.
Because here's the deal. Most banks, they do not like to lend on anything that is slightly outside of this cookie cutter box. And what we're doing, buying raw land outside of the city, subdividing it, improving it, and selling on owner financing, they've never heard of that, most of them. And they're like, we don't know which box to check here on this form. So maybe you can go talk to this or that banker. But we did find bankers, and we still have bankers that will lend on it, but they're a huge pain to deal with. They take weeks to process a loan, and there's all these requirements. It's just very, very bureaucratic, so much red tape. So yes, we created our own bank.
Okay. So basically you borrow the money from the fund and then the fund gets a set percentage.
Yes. 10%.
It doesn't get any of the profits or anything.
No, it's just a lender. It's very clean. So it's kind of like a lot of people, all they know is about investing in some sort of index fund.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe they'll put some of their money in bonds. And so this is like a lot of people that invest with us, they're familiar with other strategies. Like they might invest in other private equity funds that are a little riskier, and maybe they're an equity fund, and they will treat us as if we're like the bonds. So we're the lower stable, like steady investment that they feel like if all the crap hits the fan that we're standing.
Okay. And so you're paying 10% and that's paid out every month?
It's every month, or people can check a box and have it automatically reinvested and compounded.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I know the first time we had it, that wasn't a possibility. So
We
actually,
listened to our investors who wanted that.
yeah. So you're growing and learning at the same time. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So who is able to invest in your fund? Anybody or accredited, or how's that work?
Accredited investors, and the minimum is 100,000. So who knows? Maybe 95% or more of the American population can invest, unfortunately, but those who can enjoy it.
So now accredited, that means what? 200? I think it's 200
Well,
income.
if you're an individual, you need to be making 200,000 a year more. If it's a married couple, 300, or you need to have a net worth of $1 million, not counting the equity in your house that you're living in.
Okay. And the minimum to put in is 100, and there's, like you said, there's no tie-up phase. So somebody could come in, and then if they need it 6 months down the road, they'd be like, "Hey, I need to get out."
That's correct. So we have provisions that if everybody's trying to get their money back at the same time, there's a slow process of giving it to everybody. But in general, people get their money back fairly quickly if they need it. We've not even had our first request yet. They're putting their money with us because they want it to be with us, not because they want to pull it out. But it would take a few days to who knows, a week or two to get someone's money back to them on a typical scenario.
Right. And I mean, this is real estate. So people understand that this is not liquid. Most times you go buy a house, it's going to take you 2 months to sell it anyway. This is putting it in a fund that's invested in real estate so that if they need to, it takes time. So,
yes, but with the structure, it is pretty liquid.
okay. Okay.
Like it could be the next day we get their money back to them, but I cannot go around.
So, I mean, I wanted to go over some of the reasons for our listeners why I invested in Doug in the first place. And, this was one of the first investments that I actually made in a fund. And, he came to me and said, "Hey, look, I've been doing this and I'm starting a fund. And if you would like to invest, go ahead. These are the parameters and this is how much we're going to pay out. And there's risk involved, of course. There's risk involved with all assets and all investing and trading and whatnot."
My attorney made me say that.
Well, I mean, there is. So you don't want to have somebody come in and be like, "Oh man, I'm going to get rich," and then it doesn't happen.
But we do sell for about double what we buy for, so it's it's like with the margins like that, it's kind of hard to mess up.
So I came up with some criteria. I was like, all right. So number one, who is actually doing or leading this fund, right? And in this case, it was Doug. And I've known Doug for 10 years. And those of you guys don't know him, you don't know this and you can't tell because he looks like a really nice guy and everything in the video. But this guy is, I mean, he's a stickler. I only know this because I've known him for so long, but he tracks his net worth on a regular basis. He accounts for every single penny in his business, man. Every single 0.001%. He knows what's happening and where it's going. And this guy is meticulous on his numbers. And he was not somebody that plays loose and fast. He's got every dotted I, every T is crossed. And so that was really something that gave me a lot of confidence. Like, this guy, he knows what he's talking about, and he's been doing it on his own for a while, and the numbers just make sense. And so, a lot of times people get attracted to these investments. The only thing they know about is, oh, I can make 10%, I can make 50%, I can make 25% in maybe some cases where, it's more of a scam than anything else. There was like a lot of people investing in this crypto stuff. There are crypto funds that I've seen that are like, oh, we'll pay you 30% a month. A month? Wow. And so you get money for a month or two and then it folds and it goes out of business because it was a big Ponzi scheme. But in this case, I knew Doug and I trusted him. And that's one of the things that led me to it. The other thing was, his experience was there. And then the second part was, does the investment make sense? It's like, what is he doing or what is the investment? And in this case, it was something I had never heard about. It was pretty unique where he's buying hundreds of acres of land and then he's subdividing them into smaller pieces. And then when you subdivide it and you smell a smaller piece, you get to sell it for a lot more money. So I think some of the numbers where you were buying it for $4 or $5 a square foot, selling it for $10, $12 a square foot originally. And like you said, it's pretty hard to go wrong with those kind of numbers. This was not like a apartment complex in some other country that we're going to Airbnb it and hopefully people want to go there and stay there and maybe it's run properly. This is something that he was already doing. The third thing was, what is my risk? I'm going to put my money into this thing. I'm going to own this land. As an investor, what's my risk? And I was looking, I was like, well, this is raw land. It's been there for hundreds of years. It's not going to go anywhere. If it's not going to burn down, it's not going to go out of business. He can't take it and run away with it. The only thing that might happen is it doesn't sell. He'll buy it. It doesn't sell. It'll sit there. And maybe 5-10 years from now, we'll sell it. To me, that was like the only risk. It's like if the land doesn't sell, it's just going to sit there. So I don't get my return, but at least my money is still safe. And so all those aspects, I was like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And so that's why I feel comfortable. And those are the 3 aspects I would look for in investing in any other fund. Is there anything, Doug, that you want to add? Like, what are the things people should look for when they're what questions they should ask?
I can go into that a little bit. So one of the main problems with a lot of private equity funds is that they have this projected internal rate of return, and the majority of funds do not meet their projection.
Really?
So they'll say like 15 to 20% or whatever. But here's what you do. So that'll be based on a certain amount of appreciation of whatever asset they're holding. You like reduce that appreciation by just 0.5% per year or something, and that projection all goes to crap. And part of the reason that it's so affected is that there is some debt ahead of you. And so you're just dealing with a little thin equity margin. So you play with that a little bit, and that's a high percentage of your potential return that can be taken away from you. So that's kind of like the main problem. But yes, I do invest in other funds, and private equity funds can be a good way to invest your money, right? Probably just a mix of different things like that. You could be doing options trading, like maybe you've got some like long-term like buy and hold stuff. Maybe you've got 1 or 2% of your money in crypto, whatever. But it can certainly be part of your strategy. So that's like the main problem I see with certain private equity funds. The less common one is that they're a scam. You'll see that maybe more like if there's like a crypto fund, okay, maybe like that could kind of like maybe be a scam. Oil and gas is kind of notorious for some guys that come and go with a little scam. They're going to go drill some wells here and there, and the wells end up dry, or maybe they run off with your money, but pretty notorious. But for the most part, people running private equity funds do not want to go to prison. So like they're not super incentivized to run a scam. But I'm more than happy to tell you about a story where I was scammed recently in a private equity fund.
No way.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want me to go into it.
Yeah. Let's go.
So
let's see. I'm sure people will be excited to hear about that. How the Mr. Smart guy got scammed.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, looking back, I can see how it was a scam and where I went wrong. So like I said, I like to kind of diversify a little bit of my money away from these land deals, not because I'm worried about the land deals, but it is nice to dabble in other stuff. I think we were a bunch of like business people and entrepreneurs on this call, right? So like when somebody comes to us with something and it seems like, oh, just plop $100,000 or whatever it is in your fund and you're going to pay me. Sounds great. So there was this guy, I was at this competition where veterans were pitching their business ideas and we were all investing in some of their businesses. And there was a guy in the audience and he actually ran a private equity firm himself, which he was on his maybe 6th fund, and each fund was like only a year. So that's kind of like a shorter duration than is normal. So that was a little bit atypical from the beginning. And then his first fund got a return of 63% in a year. And so I was like, of course, like my eyes lit up. Oh my God, wow, that's awesome. Like, well, what about your second one? Oh, that was 45%. What about these other ones? And anyways, I talked to one other person that had invested with him, and they were like fairly happy at the time. And so I went out and
what was he doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll tell you what he said he was doing. He said that he and his team were going out there and buying mineral rights from individuals and then aggregating those and selling them to companies that were looking to buy larger chunks of minerals.
Interesting.
So like they had like direct mail and stuff. So that like, old Sue, she's like 80 years old, inherited some minerals. She didn't even know about it. And she gets a little direct mail piece from his company saying that they'll buy her minerals, I'm sure at a discount. Doing that for a lot of people, aggregating them and then selling them in a package. So it kind of made sense, aggregate and sell for a higher price. And
yeah.
So, but here's the deal. I'm not an oil and gas guy. And so I was not able to properly vet the investment. I was just sort of going off. These other investors seem kind of happy. This seems legit. I went out to his office and I met with him and his staff out there. He's got like all these people with firm handshakes and strong like back slaps, and I don't know, there's like maybe a team of 15 or 20 people there. A lot of them were Rice University MBA graduates. And it just seemed kind of legit. And here's the deal. They're all almost all veterans. It was a veteran owned and operated business. So
wow.
You go in there and there's like all these like swords on the walls and stuff. Like and flags, and just like this guy seemed like Captain America. like I was 15 years ago, I was running an internet business, and this guy was out there like killing terrorists or something. It's like, okay, I was like really looking up to this guy, and a lot of other people were too. And so over time, he took on maybe 60 million from people over the course of 5 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, we found out through an email from him like 2 months ago that he had squandered almost all of our money, and that he was basically using fund money to pay his staff, which you cannot do that. The fund money has this very designated purpose, which is to invest in whatever asset you're investing in, and had just basically raped and pillaged the bank account for the fund. And it's very hard for like $30 or $60 million, because I think ultimately the losses were 30 million. But for me, it was like almost all of my money. The early, like first two funds, they mostly got their money back. But beyond that, it was scam time.
Oh, wow.
And so, so like he was totally mismanaging the funds. And we still don't know if he ran off with some of them on his own, or if he was just trying to pay his employees and save his company and make desperate business moves to sort of save things or salvage things. But oil and gas has been going downhill. It's been in a trough over the last year or two, but maybe it's doing better lately. I think it is, but that really hit him. Just, I guess maybe when the pandemic was starting, and maybe even before then.
Yeah, oil went in the toilet pretty much.
Yeah, so I kind of he'll go to prison, which I don't know why in the heck he would want to do something that would lead him to prison. That's crazy. Like any sane private equity fund manager, that's their main goal. It's not to go to prison. So then how do you not go to prison? You don't do anything illegal.
Tell that to Madoff.
Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, but looking back, I've got some insights as to why I kind of got scammed there. I understand it more now.
Okay, tell us.
Basically, if anybody's really like espousing themselves, it's like a veteran business or a Christian business or something like that. That's usually a little bit of a red flag, because they're trying to make themselves seem like very reputable or moral and principled and all that. It's like an overreach.
And they're taking credibility from another organization kind of thing,
Yes.
They're tying themselves to something else.
Yeah. So that's one. I mean, there's many things that came together. When you go on his website, which the website's probably not even there anymore, a lot of his team members, they had various positions, but their background on LinkedIn, it all ends up being sales. Like they were all in sales before. Like the geologist was in sales. You know what I mean? I'm like, wait. So that was kind of a red flag. He had a huge overhead. Like obviously all these MBAs, it was like, maybe this is a red flag, but I wasn't so sure. And here's what I messed up doing too, is like, I know his professor at Rice, or that was his professor. He's one of our fellow EO members. And I could have asked that guy, because I asked him later, and he said, you didn't know that was a scam? It was pretty obvious. He came in here, and every time we were raising money for something, he was dropping $20,000, $30,000 at a time. Everybody else was dropping maybe $1,000. So I thought, well, he's probably just dropping all the investor money. And you see what I'm saying? I was like, oh, yeah, God. And he was like, yeah, he seems like he's maybe trying to compensate for something, make himself look a little bit better than he is. And then I got to know another investor in the oil and gas business later. He was like, oh, we've known that was a scam for the last 12 months. Just the types of the returns he's been paying out are not feasible in this industry. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, wow.
So basically I messed up by not asking those two guys before I invested. I just asked the satisfied investor that I knew. And actually, when I asked him right before I invested, he said he was less satisfied with the fund and that he would not recommend it. But I went against his advice because he could not give me a firm reason as to why I should not invest. It was more like a gut feel that he had. And then my own brother, who ended up investing, had a negative gut feel about it too. So basically, in the future, if I get some of these red or yellow flags, I'm just going to sit on the sidelines, and I'm going to sit out of that deal. Another problem is, like, I'm 40 now, and he was my same age. And so, like, I'm thinking, okay, this is a guy, like, I've had like 20 years of business experience, 18 or 20. And so, but I'm not sitting across from another guy with that amount of experience, even though it kind of felt like it, because he was in the military for 13 or 15 years. And so that's life experience for sure. But like, as far as like business, this guy was green. I'm throwing a bunch of money at this guy that's green, and so is everybody else. So that's a red flag, especially in oil and gas. I think they need to be in that industry for like decades, because it's a very tricky, complicated industry. And and very volatile, and a lot of fortunes have been made and lost. I don't want the guy that's like new to the industry.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. I'd also, I messed up. I should not necessarily be investing in stuff that I don't understand very well, like oil and gas,
Mm-hmm.
unless I'm willing to put the time into that. So the outrageous returns were a red flag. Anybody saying we're going to get you 60 something, or he didn't guarantee that, but I
Right.
don't know. It's just like, that's not super realistic. I mean, it can be done, I guess, but red flag.
Yeah. I mean, our traders, they can get it, but we don't run a fund doing that. They do
Yeah.
it on their own. They hear the
Yeah.
trades. You learn how to do it and go for it and do it. And some markets you do it, and some markets you don't. And some markets you lose. But when you have a fund, you obviously have all these expenses, like you said, the staff and the work involved and all that information, all the lawyers that you paid. I remember you telling me, how much you paid to the lawyers to make all the documents and the accounting and what is it called? The auditing and that's done on a regular basis and all that stuff. Yeah. So it takes a lot of money to put this stuff together and actually run it.
Yeah, totally. Oh, here's a couple more things about him. Like, he didn't let his investors mix and mingle. So I never really met any other investors besides that one guy. Like, there's other guys that run funds. They'll like even sometimes do lunches and dinners or like group events for their investors because they have nothing to hide. Let the investors talk to each other.
I mean, if you're legit, you want that, you want the happy people to mix with the new people. So the new people be like, oh yeah, are you doing it? They're like, yeah, I'm doing it. It's great. You want that to happen if you're legit.
Yes, totally. And we never got any documentation like showing which minerals we owned and what was sold. Like, I want to see like legitimate notarized documents, stuff that was filed somewhere. Like, so that's a problem with some funds too, is like, they're not obligated to show you all that stuff. Mm-hmm. We do. Like,
who regulates all this stuff?
The SEC.
SEC.
But that's not, I was thinking that needs to be something that maybe at some point becomes regulated. I hate to like, I'm not like a fan of more regulation, but like that might be actually coming pretty handy. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you want to be a scammer with a private equity fund, you can. It does not end well though. So you're not incentivized. And that's why it's shocking that some people would want to do it. You go to freaking jail.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I mean, you take the money and run to another country and live on an island or something.
There's like international police now. They'll get you anywhere.
You can't go to like some island that doesn't have extradition or something.
You'll be like the only white guy or whatever you are. You stand out.
Head on down to Cuba and you'll be the king. They won't take you back.
It baffles me that anybody would want to do what he did. But I don't think that's the norm. I asked a couple of attorneys, I said, how often do you see this? And they said, not very often.
No, because I mean, I know with your stuff, ever since we invested with you, it's like we get regular emails, we get regular updates. And it's like, hey, look, we bought this land and hey, we bought this property and here's the address and here's the photo. And before we even invested, I mean, you took us on a tour, like,
Yeah, we were actually on the land.
Yeah, we saw the land. We saw where it was subdivided. We saw, people that were there, that purchased other plots already and they were building stuff. So, I mean, everything was on the up and up, and it's still on the up and up. It's still, if you want access, you call Doug up and he'll explain everything. And if you want to go see it, he'll give you all the details and you go take a look and check the deeds or whatever you want to do.
We'll send our statements, our deeds, whatever. And also, some people, if they are hesitant about investing in a fund, like for us, we're willing to sell people the notes that we generate. So like they can get about a 10% return if they just own the notes, but it's a little bit more volatile because every now and then you might have a borrower that defaults and you have to foreclose and then resell. So like investing in the fund is just simpler. Mm-hmm. But if you're one of those people that just like, I don't trust like somebody else having control over my money, there's other ways to get the same return with what we've got going on. That's why we changed our name from Hawthorne Funds to Hawthorne Capital, because we sell notes and you can lend against notes or you can invest in the fund. The fund is just the easiest.
Awesome. Cool. Mm-hmm. How do people find out about you or talk to you about this?
Shoot me an email, Doug@hawthornecapital.com. That's DOUG at Hawthorne with an E, capital.com. Okay.
All right. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. And, one of the questions that I got after I did that episode 94 was like, if you're making so much money in the stock market and in options, why are you investing in real estate or something else? And right now, at least in this market, in this economy that we've had, the stock market's doing amazing. It's doing great. I mean, this year, not so much. It's kind of, going up a little bit. Last year was really good, but still as options traders, we're making a killing. and I see my investments in my accounts in there, just increasing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're at the point now where, I mean, it's got to end sometime, and it's time for, if you have a bunch of gains in your accounts, it's time to be diversified, especially with, what they're saying with inflation coming down the road. That's going to be coming pretty hard. Land is a good thing to invest in when you have inflation, because you can automatically just raise the price. Things cost more when you have inflation. So,
well, for us, what the way that's affected us is land has gone up in value, like big time over the last year, which a lot of us didn't see coming. We thought just, in a recession, we thought we're headed into a big recession that would just decrease the value of a lot of stuff. But we used to buy land for about $4,000 or $5,000 per acre, and now we're buying it for $8,000 to $10,000 per acre.
Wow!
But we sell it for a lot more too. So like we're kind of in the flipping game. We buy, and then a few months later, or sometimes it's maybe a year, we sell the little pieces, because we buy a bunch and we chop it up little pieces. So we'll sell those, but then we sell them on owner financing. So we collect on that income stream over about 15 years. But yeah, we've seen the market moving in land for sure.
So who's buying these little pieces from you?
Blue collar individuals who live in the city and want to be able to go out to the country on the weekends and enjoy time with their family and their dogs. And maybe they want get some animals out there, and maybe have a little swimming pool, something like that. They want to be out in the country, and there was already such a demand for that pre-pandemic, but it just exploded here with the pandemic. But our model works like pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post. It doesn't really matter for us. It changes some of the numbers a little bit. Like if we have to buy for more, then we sell for more.
Right.
But the demand is there, and we do a lot of advertising on Facebook to sell our ranchettes, and we also are on the MLS and all these other places. But with Facebook ads, we spend about $2 per lead, and we're able to ramp that budget up or down and get as many ranchette buyers as we want. So it's just a matter of the sales team handling all those leads.
Really?
Yeah, that was true before the pandemic. We didn't need the pandemic to make our business work.
And what about the land, finding the land?
We look on the MLS. There's a website called Lands of Texas. There's one of those for just about every state. So we look at a bunch of land and we try to get a deal on what we can, but usually maybe the best we can do is about a 10% discount. Now we're looking for land that has access to roads on a couple of sides so that we can chop it up and to where each little ranchette will have access to a road. So normally we'll buy 100 or 200 acres at a time, for example. And these are all over different parts. It's not like one all together. It's a subdivision. And yeah, so then we'll chop it up, and we need to get each of those little pieces access to a road, because it costs a lot of money to build roads. And that would make our deals a lot less profitable if we had to do that.
Ah, I see. So you buy the properties that already have roads, and do you add the utilities, or?
Yes, we'll put in a water well that costs about $6,000, maybe $7,000. And then we'll put in fencing, usually costs about $5,000. Put in a gate for maybe another $1,000. A culvert driveway. Every now and then a pond. We bring in power, can cost $1,000 or $2,000 per ranchette. So like the typical 10-acre ranchette, we will have bought for about $80,000, and we will have put about $20,000 in improvements into it. So now we're in it for $100,000, and then we'll sell it for maybe $180,000.
Okay.
And the fund lends as we do these things. It lends on the land, and then it lends on the note that we generate. So that's kind of the margins we're dealing with lately. Actually, I probably sell it for more than $180,000 actually on that scenario.
And how long do you think this will last? This will run?
I don't see how it would end.
There's plenty of land out there?
Yeah, there's plenty of land, plenty of buyers. We've got a lot of investors investing with us and wanting to.
So you're not closed, or you're not full. You're still taking investors.
Okay, that's a good question. Fund 2 opens and closes as needed. So we took on about like 5 or 6 million last month, and we close it because we have to deploy that capital for new purchases. Because as soon as we take it on, we have to start paying our investors. So we're not going to take on like 10 million when we can only deploy 5. So we're about to buy some more land, so we'll open it up temporarily, take on that money, and then close it. And we'll just accept a certain amount of money, whatever we need at that time, whether that's 2 million, 5 million, whatever it is, then we'll close it.
So you have basically like a waiting list.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Okay. I think we've covered everything I had, all my questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything else our listeners and our watchers need to know before they go out and invest funds? Because there's a lot of funds on now that, with the crowdfunding and all that stuff. What do you think about that?
I think some of the inferior funds are going that route because if you've got a solid fund, you really pull a lot from your own network. And so you don't have to go, like, I don't have to go like list my fund on some sort of like Fundrise or Realty Mogul or whatever, because I get all my money just from my like word of mouth. Everybody just talks, right?
Mhm.
And that's how most like well operated funds are, because they will take a cut of whatever you raise. And so you get sometimes like slightly newer operators,
Uh-huh.
or they don't have the network, or maybe there's not as good of word of mouth or something. So I'm not like a fan necessarily of investing in that kind of stuff. There is a cool website that came out called Veravest. It's fairly new, and they research. They do the sort of a background check on certain private equity funds,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can kind of go and make sure that they're. You can never be fully sure, right? But make sure they're probably not a scam. So, but those operators are paying Veravest a fee. I don't know if it's like a monthly fee or what, for them to be like gold verified or whatever it is on that website. And then so if they are, they're showing up high on that website, and they get a lot of new business from investors, or new investor capital.
I see. It's kind of like the BBB, the Better Business Bureau, where you have to pay them to get good ranking.
The BBB is kind of a scam. I don't know if
I think it's a huge
y'all know that?
scam.
It's a scam.
People still believe in it. They're like, oh, well, I mean, not too much anymore. I don't hear about it anymore. But people before were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go check the BBB. I'm like, okay, but if we pay them, they'll say good stuff about us. That's kind of the thing.
On my other business, My House Deals, we had 42,000 something paying subscribers at the time, and we had 5 complaints on the BBB. That's 5 out of like 42,000 something. And these are people that had never even raised the issue with us first. They just went straight to the BBB because they wanted a refund or whatever. And the BBB gave us a D or F rating. And yeah, we went in there, and they basically said that we were like poorly operating our company. I said 5 out of like 42,000. I said, here's our list. I printed out. It's like this huge stack. These are all of our customers. The 5 people complained, and they said that basically we need to pay them some more money, and then we would be like A-rated. I was like, this is a racket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a huge racket.
It is.
So luckily nowadays people can just look at Google reviews, and those can be manipulated a little bit too. Like if the company is like sending all their customers to leave reviews or
for something free, like they're giving away a free service or something.
They do that on Amazon too. Like,
Amazon's full of fake reviews. I mean, they buy the reviews. They don't even give, it's like there are companies out there you can hire, and they'll just go out and give you like, yo, you want 20 fake reviews? Okay, pay us. And we'll go, and our people will go, and, they have all these fake accounts and everything. And they just, Amazon. I don't trust anything on Amazon. It's like it's super hard to know if the reviews are good.
Yeah, they need to do some coding to kind of look for that. But there are certain plugins you can install, like if you use Chrome as your browser, like like a fake spotter review, and they'll analyze, see whether that they think that Amazon review is legit or fake, and they'll give it a rating. That's pretty cool.
Interesting.
I use that. Yeah, but at least we have that. We don't have to depend on the BBB anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. All right, Doug. Appreciate everything you shared with us. Again, Doug's email is Doug@Hawthorne Funds.
Doug at Hawthorne Capital, or email my assistant Ellen at hawthornecapital.com.
Okay.
And we'll put you on the email list. So like maybe every 4 or 6 weeks or so, you'll get an update that shows what we're doing. So even if you're not looking to invest now, it's fine. Like maybe 3 years from now, you've been getting our updates and you've been getting educated and seeing what we do. Then if you felt like investing, you could.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And full disclosure, I am an investor. I was in the first fund, and we rolled over the money into the second fund. But yeah, so if you're interested in getting into a fund, do your due diligence, please. This is you turning over your money to someone else. Hopefully they have experience. Hopefully they have a track record, and they know what they're doing. And they most of these funds are not scams, because they do take a bunch of money to put together an investment to start up, and they have something to show for it. I think the bigger fear is, if the investment goes south, how much of your investment can you lose? Can you lose all of it, etc.?
Yeah. And that's going to be case by case. Each fund is going to have a different risk reward profile. So you really got to look at that.
Yeah. How would you know?
Well, ideally, either you're in that industry, kind of like, sort of like, or you have a friend who is.
Okay.
You want to run it by people and really get to know the operator. Maybe talk to a couple different people who run similar types of funds. If it's pretty common that it's multifamily apartments. Of course, there's some commercials, there's some office buildings and stuff that's been beat to heck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody at the gym the other day. He put a bunch of money in a fund that invested in hotels. He put in his money in right before the recession. He got hammered.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
so do they do those funds? Then they go out of business, and then everything gets foreclosed.
the lender forecloses on the fund because the fund has borrowed money.
Okay. So what can the individual investors do when that happens?
They get whatever's left over after the bank gets paid.
So they can't sue. They can't do anything.
Well, if there was fraud committed, yes, but some of that there was no fraud. It was just maybe a poor investment. Poor timing.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. You guys do your due diligence. Make sure you know. All right, Doug, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We're going to put this out to everybody. And, at least my recommendation is that Doug is a stand-up, honest guy most of the time. Again, I've known him for years. So, yeah. Thanks, Doug, again. And talk to you soon.
Thanks, Alan.
All righty. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Are you ready to get started with passive trading and be a consistent and confident and profitable trader, generating cash flow consistently from the stock market? Well, I have some great news for you. For a limited time, we are offering my new book, Passive Trading, for free. All you got to do is go to passivetrading.com/free book, and we will send you the book in the mail for free, as long as you cover the postage and handling. So if you can cover that, we'll send you the book for free. We've already printed it. We got it for you. We're going to send it out to you. It's free. All you got to do is just go to passivetrading.com/free book and learn the basics of passive trading. Get the behind the scenes, get some examples, learn the strategies, and put this stuff to work in your life right now. Remember, go to passivetrading.com/free book and get yours now while this offer is still available.